Nous nous vaut la vie, l'économie de la vie. This is this year's budget title. When I hear the Honorable Herdoyal talk about mettre bâton dans la roue, I say this is not nouveau. We are not here, no one is here to mettre bâton dans la roue. We are all here patriots, elected to do our duty, to safeguard the interest of the people of this country. The people of Mauritius who have voted for us to represent him here in this August Assembly. It is in this spirit that I express my wish that life post-COVID-19 will not be as hard as major countries, all the majority of the countries in the world expect it to be. But having listened to the Minister of Finance, Honorable Minister of Finance, in the House and outside the House, I have a number of questions. Questions that people put to me. Les gens de ma circonscription, entre autres, which I do not find answered in his lengthy discourse. This coronavirus has taken a heavy toll, not only on the lives of our people. And here I wish to express my sincere sympathy and condolences to those who have fallen and to their families. The virus has affected the health of our people, but also our people's ability to stay into jobs and thus earn a living. As we speak, 1,043 people, jobs in the tourism, textile, manufacturing, commerce are at stake. 946 employés de trop, 397 employés en congé sans solde. Ce n'est que la première vague de demandes de licenciement auprès du Redundancy Board. People I meet ask me many questions about their future and the future of their families. Yet I do not find many of these issues addressed in this budget. From a minister not only responsible to balance the books today, but for planning for reshaping the future of this country. As I speak, our borders are still closed. And here I wish to once again mention how sorry I feel for all Mauritians who are still stranded overseas. I've been in contact with many of them, and I know how much they have suffered, and many still are. I hope they will be back among us very soon. Deputy Speaker, sir, it is also a fact that many countries have started recording a daily increase in the number of coronavirus cases, stoking fears of a second wave of outbreak. The global truth is that we may never escape this virus, and there will be certainly more threats around the corner for which we need to plan great resilience. Sadly, this is not addressed in the budget, which seems hardly to recognize there is a future corner to look around. Resilience demands that we open our borders to foreigners again, which has a definite bearing on our economy and on the budget itself. But opening up will have to be accompanied with a new protocol, which is well defined to protect our people until the time we have a vaccine and to provide protection against the next global health threat for which we must be better prepared. I, for one, believe that for every disease, God eventually sent us his cure. But he has also endowed us with the responsibility to seek those solutions ourselves. I don't quite see how this budget will protect our health from a second wave of the coronavirus, if ever there is one, which I hope there isn't. What I see is there's a provision to cover exceptional expenditure in connection with COVID-19 pandemic as part of 2 billion rupees of the National Environment Fund, the rationale of which I don't quite fully understand as yet. But I look forward to the details in the forthcoming supplementary appropriation bill on the National Environment Fund. Deputy Speaker, sir, let me now address more specifically some of the measures mentioned in the budget discourse. At paragraph 21C of his speech, the minister has mentioned sustainable and inclusive development as the new normal of the economy of life. I wonder what is new here. Gouvernement Les Peuples, as it was called in 2015, decided in January 2015 to dissolve Maurice Ildurab project, on which I worked from 2009 to 2014 at the Prime Minister's office before entering politics, therefore in a past recent life. The mandate of the Maurice Ildurab Commission, to remind, was to coordinate the implementation of sustainable development across key sectors of the economy. The Commission was dissolved, and it was integrated with the Ministry of Environment. And this was deemed also a new normal at the material time. But when we see what is happening to our country, there don't seem to have been any sustainable development at all for the last 5 years. Sustainable development is about the balance between the care for the environment, economic growth, and social welfare. Deputy Speaker, sir, let me take some issues, because there's time constraint, one by one of the 3 pillars of sustainable development. And I start with environment first. Over the last 5 years, between 2015 and 2019, the Ministry of Environment has become a sort of a garage to park ministers, 3 ministers, all of the 3 of whom have not been candidates at the last general election. And we know who they are. And who are the greatest losers in all this? The people of Mauritius are their quality of life, the national economy, and our hitherto famed luxuriant natural environment. This is a great concern to many people because the quality of our ecology affects both the quality of life, and this deeply affects the tourism industry as well, which had already started to decline before COVID-19 became a priority. And this should not be allowed to mask the fundamental environmental crisis we face. The looming climate change, the increased risk of sea level rise, beach erosion, and more frequent and intense natural disasters, heat waves and droughts, all these are threats we are facing. Sustainable development does not mean construction, which is now presented as a pillar in this budget, from shore to shore. The new normal must be a new balance in which the environment is valued as a national asset, and we invest to preserve and protect it in our own interest. So let me remind Deputy Speaker, sir, about the core issues for the pursuit of sustainable development, which some seem to have forgotten or ignored over the last 5 years. We all remember what the headlines have been, Deputy Speaker, sir. De Maurice Ildurab à Maurice Poubelle. L'île Maurice est sale. Maurice n'a plus la panache d'avant à cause de la dégradation environnementale. L'environnement physique de nos îles, plages et lagons a subi des dégradations importantes. And who does not remember what Mr. Jocelyn Kwok, directeur de la RIM, has been warning us since May 2019, a year ago. And he said, I quote, notre tourisme ne va pas très bien en ce moment. That was a year ago. So it is not just the lack of airlines that are keeping people away. It is the lack of confidence in Mauritius as land where nature is protected and cherished. The global perception of trust in our over-vaunted natural brand has been tarnished, Deputy Speaker, sir. Therefore, it is not COVID-19 that has brought the decline to the tourism industry of Mauritius last year. Whilst at the same time, tourism industry was doing so well in the Maldives and in the Seychelles. The downfall of the tourism industry is due to mismanagement and lack of vision. The question is, can people place their trust in the government to protect and preserve our natural environment for the future? Before I switch from environment to economic pillar, I would like to have a word on renewable energy, And it is high time that the 29 megawatts wind farm at Plaine Sophie be constructed. This project was originally supposed to be commissioned in May 2015. Several extensions later, 5 years later, I've sent many questions on this in Parliament, and I'm taking this project specifically because 29 megawatts of wind farm at Plaine Sophie is a sizable project, which is needed if the government wants to achieve the 40% of renewable energy by 2030, as enunciated in the budget speech. As regards economy pillar, Mr. Speaker, sir, I have an immediate question. Where is fiscal sustainability in this budget? It is a fact that the Bank of Mauritius, the regulator, the banker of bankers, certainly not the banker of government, has stepped in and has put at the disposal of government a whopping first time ever historical 158 billion rupees to fund this budget, and small amount coming from grants and loans and from windfall gains and so forth. But what about next year, Deputy Speaker, sir? There is money this year, but there is no foreseen sustainable development. The question again is, can the people place their trust in the government to protect their livelihoods for the future? Sustainable development, after all, is development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Deputy Speaker, sir, on the other hand, there seems to be a disparity between the direction the government wants to go with regards to taxation. The 25% solidarity levy will apply to all Mauritians, it has been said in the morning, and not to expats. Why is that so? What kind of message does the government want to send to the diaspora and to their parents who have invested massively in the education of their children and the prospect of them coming back to motherland and to put their competences at the disposal of the country? To me, this is the perfect recipe for brain drain at a time the country needs our brains the most. The question again is, can the people place their trust in the government to protect the interest of Mauritian families in the future? Again, the key word here, Deputy Speaker, sir, is future. We are talking about sustainable development, future generations. The Honorable Minister of Finance has mentioned one of the key drivers of the plan de relance et de l'économie to be the construction sector. Much has been said about Spain and Dubai's troubles, about their buildings and their infrastructures. But what is the situation here in Mauritius? Let me take the private sector first. Foreign clients who have already signed up for real estate development under the PDS, Property Development Scheme, are asking for rebates, given that the value of their investment have already dropped after COVID-19. I was speaking to one real estate developer while writing my speech, and he said that clients are asking for huge reduction, even though firm contracts have already been signed. In one case, the reduction asked for a PDS was from 30 million rupees to 19.5 million rupees. And the developer will have no choice than to accept. Otherwise, the client will back out. The question again is, can business people place their trust in the government to protect their investments in the future? As regards to construction in the public sector, there are 2 points I would like to raise, Deputy Speaker, sir, tonight. The first one has to do with the proposition to release retention money, a sort of guarantee to protect the interest of the client, in this case government. And the proposition is to release retention money 6 months after 6 months instead of after 12 months like the case is now, for government projects of up to 300 million rupees, which is about the contract size of the Dekar flyover, where cracks have started to occur after 6 months after the handing over. If I'm not mistaken, the Honorable Boda is here. He was then Minister of Public Infrastructure. He will correct me if I'm not wrong. About the 6th month, 7th month, the cracks have started to occur. in the Deccan flyover. For a flyover, road project, and other civil works, any engineer would want the handed over project to fully pass the weather spectrum of winter, summer, cyclonic, and splash flood windows before releasing the money, and that spectrum, we can only have it over a year. Just imagine, Deputy Speaker, sir, had the retention money for the Deccan flyover be released after 6 months. Who would have had to foot the bill of the repair of the cracks? Definitely, most definitely the taxpayers. With this proposition to release retention money for government contracts within 6 months instead of 12 months, I question in whose interest is the government working. My second point regarding construction is the proposed Côte d'Or Technology Park. I wonder why the data park cannot be housed in the unutilized building along the motorway, which we all see when we travel there, in Rosebell Business Park, so far, for more than a decade, a white elephant. But is there any thought to economize, as every Mauritian has to, when money is scarce and debt has so mounted? Is this part of the so-called economy of life? It is high time that the country starts to do some real thinking and planning so as to optimize on resources and avoid wastages. Le gaspillage et la dette publique. Monsieur le vice-président, le directeur de l'audit est allé plus loin dans son dernier rapport, en dénonçant que pour les 3 dernières années financières, le gouvernement a littéralement vécu à crédit. Alors, comment expliquer que dans son discours, le ministre des Finances n'en parle pas du gaspillage et le niveau de la dette publique? Is it because the level of public debt has soared so much because of the depreciation of the Mauritian rupee vis-à-vis the US dollar, when we know that quite a bit of our national debt is in dollar? The question again is, can people place their trust in the government to cut out waste and promote efficiency when at such a critical moment in financial planning, the Minister of Finance is totally silent on the Director of Audit's recent well-researched recommendation to correct gross waste and mismanagement? Deputy Speaker, sir, I now move to the third pillar of sustainable development, and that is the social pillar. 1 rupee today is worth 79 cents of our rupee in December 2014. This government's ambition was to make of Mauritius a high-income country. In 2018, our GDP per capita was $11,238. I wonder what the GDP per capita is today with that kind of rapid depreciation of the rupee. At best, Mr. Deputy Speaker, sir, GDP per capita has remained stagnant, and at worst, it has surely declined. And the consequence of this is that the people of this country are getting poorer and poorer when they were promised to be richer, not poorer. I fear that the middle class in Mauritius will shrink, and we will be sadly left with 2 classes of people, les riches et les pauvres. En parlant des pauvres, c'est navrant que l'honorable ministre des Finances n'a pas trouvé nécessaire, ne serait-ce qu'une seule fois, de mentionner dans son discours le plan Marshall contre la pauvreté. On ne l'entend plus maintenant, le plan Marshall contre la pauvreté. Navrant, car c'est la brûlante question que mes mandants me posent. Deputy Speaker, sir, in regard to needy families, I wish to mention one problem that spouses of Mauritians holding residence permits perpetually face when they seek for public service. An example being treatment at public hospital. The problem is they have to pay their full bills. They have to pay for their full bills. The day before Eid this year, a young father who is married to an Indian citizen had all the trouble in the world to bring his wife and newborn baby back home because he did not have the means to settle his bill of 31,000 rupees incurred for his wife's delivery. This is because the wife has not yet obtained her citizenship and was thus not entitled to free health care, although she had given birth to a Mauritian whose father is also a Mauritian. When the father, a constituent of mine, called me up on that Saturday afternoon, he was panicky. Fortunately, a payment schedule was agreed to on that day itself. Otherwise, the family would have found itself in a catch-22 situation, because if they were not released from hospital, their bill would have kept on increasing with each passing day. I thought this budget would have addressed this issue, but it sadly did not. The budget exercise, however, makes provision for other facilities, lavish facilities to foreigners wanting to work and invest in Mauritius as per paragraph 205 of the budget speech. My plea today is for the Honourable Prime Minister, the Honourable Minister of Health, and the Honourable Minister of Finance to make an effort so as to amend the pertinent regulations in order to be fairer to Mauritians whose spouses are holders of resident permits to benefit from the same facilities as Mauritians, including free medical health care at the public health institutions. This will go a long way in addressing a long-standing injustice. A quick few points before I conclude, Deputy Speaker, sir. Recently, I raised the issue of garbage collectors, laissez-faire, not provided with a proper mask. They were given Tetron masks, made of Tetron. Those are gone. Yeah. Now they are provided with KN95 masks, so I've become their good friends. Many of them have called me after the presentation of the budget, asking me the same question that many MPs has raised before. Why don't they benefit from the 15,000 bonuses? Them who have cleaned up, who has kept our country clean and tidy all along the COVID-19 pandemic. And the same question applies to other frontliners as well. Much has been said about the number and types of social housing. I wonder whether the threshold of 10,000 rupees, which came about before the introduction of the minimum wage, is not outdated. And that should not be raised. Should it be 10,000 or more? Because the cost of living has increased. And the prices in the shops have hiked as well. So, as a matter of fact, we're talking about prices of commodities. The 30 rupees reduction on the gas cylinder has been absorbed by the increase in the price of milk. The pack of 1 kilo of milk has gone up by more than 30 rupees in the recent days. So I do believe that this 10,000 rupees threshold should be relooked at. Otherwise, a lot of people deserving social housing will be excluded from the very first tranche of the facilities being offered. Because of time constraint, Deputy Speaker, sir, I shall have this much on the three pillars of on the social pillar, and I shall conclude by saying that as an officer, as a professional who has handled the sustainable development dossier, the more I look at the budget statement and its claim to be the foundation for sustainable development, the more I fear it is merely a house of cards. The big issue today is whether the questions I've raised about the interest of the people here, le citoyen lambda, about safeguarding their future insofar as the environmental, economic and social landscapes ignored in this budget can be addressed by this government, which does not seem to have this as a priority, seemingly. Thank you.